Celtics fans, what a night it turned into at the Garden. From the moment the ball went up, you could feel a different kind of tension in the air, that unmistakable sensation that the team needed to deliver an immediate response after so many complicated finishes in recent games. Boston stepped onto the court carrying the weight of two frustrating performances, the kind where even the wins felt like losses, and everyone knew they couldn't afford to repeat that storyline again. But in the opening minutes, it became clear that nothing would come easy. The team looked stuck, short jumpers clanged off the rim, three sailed just a little off target, and every single possession required a ridiculous amount of effort just to generate a decent shot. It was the kind of start that makes every fan exhale slowly and think, here we go again. And to make matters worse, Detroit looked determined to execute the perfect script for keeping themselves near the top of the Eastern Conference. They ran the floor, they attacked in transition with ease, and every time Boston tried to settle into its offense, the smallest mistake turned into a sprint the other way, and 2 easy points. There was a sequence that summed up the entire first quarter perfectly. Derek White took a corner three from the left side and missed, sprinted along the baseline to the opposite corner, got the ball again, and missed another. Then came a mid-range jumper that also refused to fall. 3 good looks, 3 shots he normally hits, 3 straight empty trips. And on the very next play, in just 1 possession, Detroit hammered home a transition dunk. Those kinds of moments can unravel a team, especially one playing under pressure. But even with all that, even with the lead creeping into double digits at one point, Detroit never managed to create the kind of separation that kills a game early. The Celtics stayed right there, hanging on by a thread, but hanging on. Then the second quarter changed everything. It was like someone flipped a switch. Baylor Shyman checked in with an energy that instantly electrified the entire building, drilling a corner 3 from the left side that brought a collective sigh of relief from the crowd. Moments later came that move reminiscent of Peyton Pritchard's signature action in the lane, a quick spin into an off-balance jumper, and suddenly Boston had something it hadn't found all night: rhythm. With every possession, the crowd felt a little more alive, but the true turning point came on a play that defined the spirit of the night. In the middle of a scrambled rebound, the ball slipped away and bounced near the center court logo. Baylor immediately dove to the floor as if fighting for the final possession of a playoff elimination game. While sliding across the hardwood, he twisted his body, whipped the ball behind his back, and found a teammate near midcourt. The play didn't even result in a direct basket. Detroit managed to block the next shot, but the message had already been delivered. That moment was about desire, commitment, and refusing to lose another game due to a lack of effort. The arena recognized it immediately. The fans rose as if that dive had been a game-winning shot. And not long after, another play sent the energy surging even higher. Sam Hauser missed a jumper from the right wing. Jaden Ivey burst out in transition, ready to attack the rim, and it looked like Detroit was about to steal back the momentum. But Derek White appeared out of nowhere. He flew down the court in that signature way of his, body low and slicing through air, tracked Ivey from behind, and ripped the ball away in one of the most spectacular defensive plays of the entire night. He turned, lifted his head, and fired a perfect pass ahead to Josh Min, who nearly lost control, but somehow guided the ball into the basket. The Garden erupted. At that point, Boston was still technically trailing, but emotionally the game had already flipped. It felt as if someone had lit a fire at midcourt, and the entire roster started feeding off it. Joe Mazzulla later said that more than execution, more than X's and O's, what mattered in that moment was grit. The stubborn refusal to repeat the mistakes of previous games. That resilience showed in the way the team survived the ugly first quarter, steadied their nerves, and transformed the game through pure intensity. And it wasn't just about the highlights. It was about every player stepping into the level of urgency required. The Celtics were coming off a loss to Brooklyn and had nearly blown a big lead to Orlando, leaving a cloud of doubt hovering over the team. But against Detroit, even while the scoreboard refused to shift for a while, the group showed clear signs of being locked in, focused, composed, and determined to shed whatever had been holding them back. Within that environment, the supporting cast delivered the kind of contributions that often go unnoticed when you only glance at the box score. Peyton Pritchard's nonstop movement created space and pressure. Baylor Shyman threw his body into every battle. Josh Min delivered in key stretches on both ends. And Amari Williams, though his numbers weren't flashy, imposed a physical presence in the paint that kept Detroit from bullying their way to a comfortable lead. He contested shots, protected the rim, absorbed contact. All the little details added up to keep the game within reach. Meanwhile, Derek White, who had spent half the game struggling to find his rhythm, gradually broke free. His movements became sharper, his decisions quicker, and when the second half started, it was obvious something had shifted. The shots that had rattled out earlier suddenly dropped smoothly, almost inevitably. Bit by bit, Boston began to take not just emotional control, but tactical control as well, fueled by a crowd that felt the comeback growing. A game that had seemed destined to repeat the frustrations of the previous week instead became a reminder of what the Celtics can be when they play with conviction and trust their depth, even before the stars fully take over. The emotional comeback arrived first. The technical one followed right behind. And with every possession, the team showed more and more willingness to do whatever it took to walk off the court with a victory that meant far more than just another number in the standings. What came next felt like the natural continuation of a team rediscovering itself. As the third quarter unfolded, Boston didn't just look more confident. They looked purposeful, as though every possession was a chance to reclaim a version of themselves that had been missing. The ball movement sharpened, the defensive rotations tightened, and the communication on the court grew increasingly vocal. You could see Derek White pointing, Peyton Pritchard clapping his hands and yelling out switches, Amari Williams pounding the hardwood after a big stop. The Celtics hadn't just woken up. They were fully engaged, fully alive, operating with the type of unity that transforms close games into defining ones. Detroit, for their part, refused to fold. Their young core pushed every advantage they could find, attacking the paint with aggression and taking advantage of any opening on the perimeter. There were stretches where Isaiah Stewart's physicality forced Boston into uncomfortable matchups, and moments where Jaden Ivey seemed determined to take over the entire game by sheer force. Cade Cunningham orchestrated their offense with a patience that made every defensive possession feel like it lasted a minute longer than it should have. And yet, every time Detroit managed to land a punch, Boston answered with one of their own. The most fascinating shift came when Boston began dictating the tempo. Early in the game, Detroit had controlled the rhythm with transition bursts and quick strikes, but now the Celtics slowed the game when they wanted to, sped it up when they needed to, and made Detroit adjust on nearly every possession. That control came from the guards, from the deliberate pace that White, Pritchard, and Baylor Shyman established. They read mismatches more quickly, attacked switches with confidence, and found the open man without hesitation. Josh Min, once again, became a crucial connector, cutting at the perfect moments, sprinting into gaps, timing screens to create just enough daylight for a teammate. There was a possession midway through the third quarter that embodied Boston's newfound poise. The initial action was defended well by Detroit, forcing Boston to reset. Instead of panicking or forcing a contested jumper, the ball swung from one side to the other. White to Hauser, Hauser to Pritchard, Pritchard back to Hauser, each pass faster than the last. Finally, Hauser drove baseline, drew two defenders, and kicked it out to Baylor Shyman at the top of the arc. The shot left his hands with the kind of calmness that doesn't belong to a rookie or a role player, but to someone who understands the weight of the moment. The ball splashed through, and the Garden roared. It wasn't just a three-point shot. It was a declaration that Boston had settled in, that the earlier chaos had become clarity. From that moment forward, the energy inside the arena shifted into something entirely different. Every defensive stop felt heavier. Every offensive possession felt richer with meaning. The crowd sensed that Boston was on the verge of taking control for good, and the players felt it too. The defense rose in intensity, with rotations snapping into place just as Detroit initiated their sets. Amari Williams delivered two massive contests at the rim, one of which sent the ball bouncing near half court. Pritchard chased it down, saved it from going out of bounds, and flicked it backward to Derek White, who immediately pushed the pace. White found Min streaking down the lane, and Min powered through contact for an and-one that sent the bench into chaos. Even the mistakes began to feel like part of a larger momentum. There was a possession where Hauser missed a wide-open three that would have tied the game, but instead of hanging his head, he sprinted back on defense, rotated just in time to cut off a drive, and forced Detroit into a rushed mid-range jumper. Boston grabbed the rebound, and within seconds, Hauser was right back on the other side, hitting the exact same shot he had missed. That sequence captured perfectly what the night had become. Less about perfection and more about persistence. As the fourth quarter began, Boston finally took the lead for the first time since the early minutes of the game. It wasn't a dramatic shot or a flashy play. It was a gritty putback from Amari Williams after a scramble under the basket. The kind of basket that feels like a reward for all the small things a team does right. The Garden erupted, not because the shot was impressive, but because it represented the culmination of everything that had been building since the second quarter. With the lead came the toughest challenge, holding it. Detroit pushed back hard, and there were brief stretches where they regained momentum. Ivy hit a tough step-back three. Cunningham threaded a perfect pass through two defenders. Stewart muscled in a putback that quieted the arena for a moment. But Boston never lost their composure again. The team that had looked scattered and hesitant in the first quarter was now controlling emotions with the steadiness of a veteran group. Derek White became the anchor. After struggling in the first half, he dominated the final minutes with the kind of calm aggression that has defined his time in Boston. He attacked the lane, got to the free throw line, and made plays that brought the team together. There was a moment when he missed a floater, but immediately stripped the ball from Detroit on a rebound attempt, reset the offense, and fed Pritchard for a deep three that blew the lid off the Garden. But the defining sequence of the night came in the final 3 minutes. Detroit had cut the lead to 2. The tension felt thick again, and everyone braced for another stressful finish. Boston ran a high screen for White, who slipped a bounce pass to Baylor Shyman. Shyman drove, drew contact, and kicked the ball out at the very last second to Josh Min. Min didn't think. He launched the shot instantly. Swish! The arena detonated, and the Celtics never looked back. The final minutes became a showcase of determination and discipline. Boston closed out possessions with patience, hit their free throws, and refused to give Detroit the transition opportunities that had hurt them early. When the buzzer finally sounded, the celebration wasn't wild. It was relieved, emotional, and deeply satisfying. It wasn't just a win. It was a rediscovery of identity, a reminder that resilience and belief can shift the trajectory of a season. By the time the players walked off the court, you could feel that something had changed. Not in a dramatic, headline-grabbing way, but in a foundational one. This wasn't just a game the Celtics survived. It was a game they built, possession by possession, until the outcome felt earned. It was a night where role players shined, where effort became the storyline, where the Garden rediscovered its voice, and where the team reminded itself of what it is capable of when it refuses to quit. And for Celtics fans, it was the kind of night that lingers long after the lights fade. One that restores faith, excites the imagination, and hints that maybe, just maybe, the best version of this team is closer than it seemed just a few days ago. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. The air around the Boston locker room, usually charged with competitive focus, has turned palpably thick, heavy with unspoken tension that sources describe as nothing short of seismic. At the heart of the maelstrom are the team's twin pillars, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, whose long-lauded partnership now appears to be under immense strain following an incident that has sent shockwaves throughout the entire organization. Murmurs began circulating almost immediately after what was described by an insider as an icy post-game moment. But the real damage, it is claimed, stems from a cryptic, yet devastatingly effective, comment allegedly made by Brown. While the exact wording remains frustratingly elusive, cloaked in the kind of secrecy that only highly paid professionals can maintain, the message, we are told, was unambiguously directed at Tatum's leadership or perhaps his on-court decision-making during a critical offensive sequence. Whatever the precise phrase, it hit its mark. Tatum's reaction, according to multiple witnesses, was one of incandescent fury, rapidly cooling into a cold, stony silence that spoke volumes more than any shout could. The scene was reportedly so charged that veteran players and coaching staff were left scrambling to de-escalate a situation that threatens to unravel the carefully constructed dynasty the franchise has been building for years. The fallout is not contained to the two superstars. The rest of the roster is walking on eggshells, caught in the awkward space between the two alpha talents. Practice sessions, normally spirited and boisterous, are now reportedly quiet, almost painfully businesslike. The coaching staff is reportedly working overtime to bridge the divide, acutely aware that an unresolved rift between players of this caliber could shatter the team's championship aspirations. The immediate consequence of Brown's supposed barb and Tatum's subsequent palpable anger is a locker room dynamic that is suddenly fragile, where trust has been replaced by suspicion. Insiders suggest that what was once healthy competition has devolved into resentment, fueled by the relentless pressure to secure a title. The question now being debated in hushed tones across the league is simple. Was this a flashpoint of competitive frustration, or does this signal a deeper, more fundamental schism in their partnership? For a team that has so much invested, both financially and emotionally, in the success of its two homegrown stars, the clock is ticking. Every contest played under this cloud of tension feels like a precarious balancing act, and every off-court interaction is being scrutinized. The whispers are growing louder, suggesting that the franchise may soon have to choose between a forced truce and a radical trade. Because right now, the silence between the two stars is deafening, and it's the sound of a championship dream fractured. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.